Good morning. So today we're going to have our lecture in anatomy and kinesiology involving the elbow and radioulnar joints. So the elbow and radioulnar joints usually group together due to close anatomical relationship, especially the proximal radioulnar joints. It is very close to the humero-ulnar joints. Elbow joints All elbow joint movements may be clearly distinguished from those of radioulnar joints, often grouped together due to proximity entirely different, and the two joints are entirely different. Structurally, there are two joints in the elbow, and functionally, there are only one joint that is involved in the movement of the elbow. Elbow joint has a distal attachment, which is the ulna, and the radioulnar joint distal attachment is the radius. So the ulna uh, approximate uh, with the humerus, while the radius approximate uh, with the rest joints. So we're going to discuss about the bones, the muscles, and movements. So we have here the uh, elbow joint. So we have here now the structure of the elbow joint. So we have the lateral ridge, which is it is where the radial nerve passes. Then you have here the medial epicondyle, the lateral epicondyle. Okay, then you have your trochlea, the capitulum. The trochlea articulates uh, with the ulna. Then your capitulum articulates with the head of the radius. But actually, there's a gap, no? Not really that the head of the radius is close to the capitulum, just like the amount of closeness of the ulna. So because the articulation of the radius is basically it is attached to the ulna, forming the proximal radioulnar joint. Okay, so we have here the coronoid process, which serves as attachment of ano, serves as the groove which the trochlea glides during elbow flexion and extension. Then you have your radial tuberosity and ulnar tuberosity. Okay, so the radial tuberosity serves as attachment of your biceps and your ulnar tuberosity attachment of the brachialis muscle. So when the elbow flex, the coronoid process uh, go move into the coronoid fossa. No. So this is the lateral view. So you have the ulna here. So we have the olecranon process. So when you extend, the olecranon process moves to the olecranon fossa at the back of the humerus. Okay. So when it flex, the coronoid process moves in the coronoid fossa. Okay. So you have the trochlear knots. Okay. So if you look at the distance of the head of the radius from the capitulum, it is very far compared to the distance of the trochlea to the ulna, because the head of the radius again articulates on the lateral side of the mm, on the lateral side of the ulna. So this is the lateral view. Oh, so this is the structure. So look at the so you have the radial nuts which is found in the ulna. This is where the head of the radius articulates. So the elbow and radioulnar joints is a diarthrodial, or the elbow joint is a diarthrodial uniaxial hinge joint. It has a diarthrodial mean it is a freely movable type of joint, uniaxial because it has one only it moves only in one axis, elbow flexion and extension. Whereas the pronation and supination occurs not in the elbow, but it occurs in the proximal radio and proximal and distal radioulnar joints. Okay, so the axis of movement is the axis is in the uh, coronal axis, while the plane of motions occur in the sagittal plane. Movements niya is only flexion and extension. The articulation occurs in between the ulna and the humerus. Okay, so if you are going to flex the elbow, the end feel is soft because of the caution that is given by the biceps and the forearm muscle. So when you try to flex, they touch. So that's why it has a soft end feel. Whereas when you extend, it is a hard end feel because of the articulation of the olecranon process and the olecranon fossa. The radioulnar joint. So radioulnar joint is a diarthrodial uniaxial pivot joint. Its plane of axis, it occurs in the transverse, the plane. No, yeah, the movement occurs in the transverse plane, whereas in the axis of rotation occurs the antero-posterior. Oh no, on the vertical axis rather. The movements, it is more on supination and pronations. The articulations, it occurs between the humerus and between the ulna and the radius. So you have your proximal radioulnar and distal radioulnar joints. So this is now your the area where your radius articulates in the proximal area of the ulna. So you have what we call the radial knots, which is found in the ulna, and the head articulates with that, no, of the radius. So every time you pronate and supinate, the when you pronate, the the radius crosses the ulna, and the proximal joint, radioulnar joint, rotates. Now the radius rotates in its axis, and then the distal one crosses. Okay, so it goes like so. These are the movements, no, of the elbow. So you have here from 0 to 180 degrees. So that is your elbow flexion, and you have your extension. So this is now the pronation and supination. So from 90, so you have here from 90 degrees, this is considered as neutral. So it goes here 90 and 90 on the other side. No? I will be talking about the muscles of the elbow. Muscles of the elbow, or muscles that is responsible for moving the elbow, they're found in the forearm. Okay? No, in the forearm, in the arm rather. No? What are these muscles? First, you have your biceps. You have your biceps brachii, you have the long head and the short head. So, the long head originates from the coracoid process, and the short head originates from supraglenoid here of the scapula. And the insertion, it inserts in the radial tuberosity of the radius. So that's why when the biceps contract, the there is an accessory motion that happens, which is supination. Because biceps muscle can supinate the forearm if the forearm is in pronation. Okay? Pag naka-prone na siya, yung biceps mo, tutulong siya dun sa supinator para magsusupinate ng forearm. Lalo na pag may resistance na inalalagay. Okay? Then you have your brachialis. Your brachialis muscles originates from the distal half of the anterior portion of the humerus. It inserts in the coronoid process of the ulna. So your brachialis muscle is considered as pure elbow flexor. It flexes the elbow, whether it is in supine or prone position of the elbow. But it is more effective, or it is more active when the forearm is in prone position. Okay. Then you have your brachyradialis. Your brachyradialis originates in the lateral ridge of the humerus and insert to the distal part of the styloid process of the radius. Still, it is considered as elbow flexor. But basically, when your forearm is in uh, prone or in supine position, your brachyradialis is considered as stabilizer of the elbow joint. So when, in what position of the elbow or of the forearm does the brachyradialis becomes active? When your forearm is in neutral position. That's the time that your brachyradialis muscle is active. Okay? So you have three positions of the forearm. So when your forearm is in prone position and try to flex the elbow, the most active muscle there is your brachialis. When it is in supine, it's the biceps. When it is in neutral, it is the brachyradialis. Okay. Now let's go to the muscles at the uh, posterior part of the forearm. So you have your triceps brachii. So triceps means it has three heads. Okay. So you have the long head, the medial head, and your lateral head. So your triceps brachii is responsible for extending the elbow. It could, since it crosses also the shoulder, it is also capable of extending the shoulder, just like the biceps. No? So the long head of the triceps originates from the posterior surface of the from the infraglenid tubercle of the scapula, while the lateral head is a upper half of the posterior surface of the humerus, and the medial head on the distal two-thirds of the posterior surface of the humerus. Now, collectively, they have one single tendon that inserts on the olecranon process of the ulna. So, length tension relationship, the the triceps muscles will become efficient in extending the elbow if you try to position the shoulder in flex position. So, pag naka-flex yung shoulder mo, especially if it is in 90 degrees, then your triceps could extend the elbow efficiently because, again, it is in lengthened position already, and it produces a maximum tension. No? Then you have your anconus. Okay, anconus is a very small muscles that crosses the elbow. It is found on posterior part of the elbow. So it is also considered as elbow extensor. So the origin is it originates from the lateral condyle of the humerus and inserts in the posterior surface of the upper ulna and olecranon. So if you are asked which of the following muscles is the pure elbow extensor, yes, triceps or anconeus. Of course, your answer should be anconeus because anconeus only it is the it crosses only one joint, which is the elbow on the posterior part of your elbow. No, the triceps it crosses the shoulder, so therefore it is not considered as the pure elbow extensor because it can move also the shoulder. Just like if you are asked what is the pure elbow flexor, if you are given the biceps, brachioradialis, and brachialis, of course your answer should be brachialis because brachialis crosses only one joint and it can flex the elbow in all positions, neutral, prone, and supine. Brachioradialis could be considered, but again, when it is in supine position or in prone position, your brachioradialis becomes a stabilizer of the elbow. It 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 has a very small effect. Now the contraction of the brachioradialis has a very small effect in doing the elbow flexor in these positions. Okay, so then you have your pronator teres. So your pronator teres originates from the distal part of medial condyle ridge of the humerus and it inserts in the middle third of lateral surface of the radius. Okay, so it pronates. When you say pronates, or when you pronate, the radius crosses the ulna. Okay, so the position of the palm when you pronate is facing downward. Okay, so when your palm face upward, that is supination. So the pronation is the opposite. Okay, so you have two muscles which is responsible for pronating the excuse me, the forearm, the pronator quadratus and the pronator teres. So this is your pronator quadratus. It is found on the distal part of the forearm. So your pronator teres pronates the forearm proximately, while your pronator quadratus pronates your forearm on the distal portion. Okay, then you have your uh, uh, innervation. Okay, let me go on. Okay, later na lang. Then you have your supinator. Okay, supinator muscles is responsible for supinating the elbow, the forearm. So the primary supinator is your supinator of the forearm is your supinator muscles, but also your biceps could supinate the elbow or the forearm rather. Okay, so the supinator muscles originates from the lateral surface of the proximal radius, this one, and inserts in the uh, lateral it originates from the lateral epicondyle and inserts in the lateral surface of the radius. Okay, so it has two heads. You have the ano, mayroon siyang dalawang origin which is the naka-origin siya sa posterior part ng ulna. Okay, aside from the lateral head. So mayroon siyang origin din uh, sa ulna. Ang insertion niya ay doon siya naka-insert sa radius. So pag nag-contract yung supinator, pinupull niya yung radius, pulling the forearm to move with the palm facing upward. That is your supinator muscles. acting. No? Then let's go now to the movements. Okay. So flexion. So this is the flexion of the forearm, and you have your extension. So when you flex, you are going to bend, decreasing its angle, while the extension, you move the forearm away from the shoulder by strengthening the elbow to increase its angle. So then you have your pronations, which is you try to move your palm facing downward, and your supination, which is you are moving your palm facing upward. So basic range of the flexion is around 180 degrees, 0 to 180, and extension is 180 to 0. So these three muscles is responsible for flexing the elbow, the biceps brachii, brachialis, and brachioradialis, with a little help coming from the pronator teres. And bakit little help? First, the function of the pronator teres is more on pronation. Okay? So this is the line of action of the force generated by the three muscles. So you have here this is the line of action of the biceps. This is the line of action of the brachialis. Then this is the line of action of your brachiorads. Then this is your line of action of your uh, pronator. Extension. So extension of the forearm it from 180 to 0. But of course, if you are going to hyperextend it, so there are only seldom few people who could hyperextend their elbow. So usually women can do that because they have a large carrying angle. So these two muscles is responsible for extending the elbow, the triceps brachii and your anconeus. So this is the line of action. Then you have your pronation and supination. So basically, when you do pronation, it's around 90 degrees from 0 to 90. So the muscles responsible for pronating the forearm is your pronator teres, pronator quadratus, and part of brachioradialis. It helps in pronation. So this is the line of action of the force generated by those three muscles. So if you're asked for the prime pronator or muscles that pronates the forearm, it is the pronator teres and the quadratus. The brachioradialis serves only as synergist. Then for supination, when your palm face upward, okay, so you have your few participation from brachioradialis, then biceps and your supinator. But the primary supinator muscle is your, or primary supinator muscle is your supinator itself. So this is the line of action. So let's go now to the kinesiology notes. So brachialis is an elbow flexor not influenced by forearm position. That's why it is called pure elbow flexor muscles. Brachioradialis, it is considered as pure elbow flexor when the forearm is in mid position or neutral. Biceps has little or no active part on slow elbow flexions when forearm is pronated. So when your forearm is pronated, little lang siya yung activity niya. So basically, it is more on the brachialis. So, or mayroon na siyang load. Biceps always acts as a flexor when forearm is supinated regardless of speed and load. So bicep is effective supinator when the elbow is flexed in 90 degrees and its effectiveness is lessened as elbow is extended because the length The when you try to extend your elbow, the lever arm of the first arm of your biceps flatten, or it is very very near, or it is in line to the axis of the elbow, no, in doing the supination. So therefore, it is more on the shoulder movement now that is responsible supinating and even pronating your elbow when you try to extend it and then perform supination and pronation of the forearm. Why? Because all the muscles at the elbow joint in that position, their axis now, or their lever arm now, or your first arm of those muscles are now in line with the axis. So therefore, it can no longer produce the movement assigned to that muscles. So therefore, when you try to pronate and supinate, it is more on the rotator of the shoulder that will do that movement. Even if you try it now, try to extend your elbow, put your arms forward, and try to prone and supinate. So you will observe that the movement occurs in the shoulder. It is not on the elbow. So supinator muscle can function without the help of the biceps when elbow is extended, except when resistance is applied. Cross-section of pronator quadratus is two-thirds greater than pronator teres, but its shortening distance is small. So pronator teres is strongest of the pronators and is superficial in location. Cross-section in triceps is 5 times that of aconius. It is shortening range twice of the aconius, that it is more powerful. Okay? So, this class, the discussion on the elbow is very short. That's why I decided not to discuss this online because maliit lang naman siya ang iyong elbow. So the next discussion will be about the wrist and hand, which is a little bit more complicated because of the intricate structure of the wrist and the hands. Okay. Thank you for listening. God bless and have a long weekend vacation.